The war had started without warning when the alien empire sent fleets across the border. Worlds burned, cities fell, and thousands of human soldiers never returned. But among the chaos, humanity stood together, refusing to bow. On the battlefield, where machines clashed and skies turned red, one soldier became known for his courage. His name spread in whispers because he never abandoned his post and never left a wounded behind. For weeks he had fought, until finally the enemy queen surrendered to avoid complete ruin. The surrender did not end with simple silence. The alien court demanded old traditions be honored. They offered the victors a choice of reward, as was custom: jewels, land, or something rarer. For the strongest warrior among the humans, the prize was far stranger. He was told he could choose one of the royal daughters. 7 alien princesses were brought before him, each dressed in armor like liquid silver, their faces shining with unearthly beauty. Their crowns glittered under the fading sun, and every soldier watching whispered that this was a reward beyond imagination. The princesses stood in a line, eyes shimmering with colors that no human painter could ever capture. Each one looked flawless, perfect, almost unreal. But at the far end of the line stood the one they called the ugliest. Her name was whispered, but not with respect. Her crown was dimmer, her posture more humble, and her face marked with faint scars that other sisters did not carry. While the others glowed with beauty, she seemed hidden, like a shadow among light. Soldiers laughed quietly, saying no man would ever choose her. The human soldier's eyes scanned each of them. He saw perfection lying before him, perfection so polished it almost felt cold. Yet when his gaze fell on the one at the end, she did not try to shine. She did not meet his eyes with arrogance, only with a strange sadness, and in that moment he felt something stir inside him. He remembered the faces of comrades, not flawless but real. He remembered strength hidden behind scars. So when he was asked to choose, his voice broke the silence of the hall. He pointed to the one they had mocked as the ugliest. The court froze. The alien queen's eyes narrowed in shock, her daughters gasped, and human soldiers stared as if he had gone mad. "You choose her?" the queen asked in disbelief. The soldiers simply nodded. His choice was not made for beauty, but for something deeper that none of them seemed to see. And yet in that choice, whispers began to spread like fire. Some mocked him as a fool, others thought he was making a cruel joke, but the soldier's face stayed calm and unshaken. The princess he had chosen stepped forward. She did not smile. Her head remained lowered, and her hands trembled slightly as if she could not believe he had spoken her name. Her sisters smirked in cruel amusement, but the soldier's eyes did not waver. He reached out his hand, and though she hesitated, she finally placed hers in his. The hall erupted in mixed voices, shock, confusion, laughter, and anger, but none of that mattered. For the first time in her life, someone had chosen her, not because of what she was told to be, but because he had seen her. The alien queen clenched her jaw. Her perfect daughters glared at their sister with contempt, but deep in the shadows of the court, something old shifted. Old records and prophecies whispered of the one princess hidden from glory, carrying a secret that even her family feared. The human soldier had not chosen beauty, but fate itself. And as the court struggled to accept his choice, the first threads of a greater truth began to weave in silence. The chamber emptied slowly after the choice was made. Human soldiers left in murmurs, still confused by what they had seen. The alien. Courtiers whispered among themselves, their jeweled faces twisted with disbelief. The queen's daughters walked out in proud formation, leaving the chosen one behind. She stood with her head bowed, silent and still. The soldier waited until the last voice had faded, then stepped closer to her. His shadow crossed her trembling hands as he spoke for the first time to the princess who was now bound to him. "You are free to walk with me," he said calmly. His tone carried no mockery, no judgment. She looked up slowly, her eyes uncertain, as if waiting for the cruel laugh she had heard all her life. But none came. The human soldier's expression remained steady, neither smiling nor frowning. He simply extended his hand. Her hesitation lasted only a moment before she placed her palm gently against his. The cold metal of her crown glinted faintly in the light as her lips parted, but no words came. They walked through the alien halls together. Every step drew stares from those who passed. Some of her own people sneered openly, their voices dripping with cruel amusement. "The human has strange taste," one said. "He does not know beauty when it stands before him," another added. The princess kept her eyes down, but the soldier's steps never faltered. He walked with her as if he carried no shame in his choice, as if her presence was honor, not burden. His calm strength made her heart tremble in ways she did not understand. When they reached the guest chambers given to the victors, silence wrapped around them. The soldier released her hand gently. "You should rest," he told her. "The court will test us tomorrow, and I will not have you stand alone." She looked at him, stunned that his words carried no sharp edge, no hidden cruelty. For the first time she saw no hunger in his gaze, no lust for her body, only an odd kind of respect. She nodded without speaking, her chest tight with a strange feeling she had never known before. The night was long for her. She sat by the tall windows where alien moons painted silver lines across the floor. Her sister's laughter echoed in her memory. Their perfect faces had always shone brighter, their beauty praised in every hall. She had been the shadow, the unwanted one. But now a human stranger had chosen her above them. She wondered why. Was it pity, was it blindness, or was it something else? The soldier slept without fear, his breathing steady as though battle itself had never scarred him. She kept watching him until sleep finally took her. Morning arrived with horns of ceremony. The queen summoned them to the central court. The 6 other princesses stood in radiant armor, their jewels blazing under the sun. They looked upon their sister with disdain, as though she were unworthy to share their blood. The queen's eyes were sharp as blades. "Human," she said coldly. "You were offered greatness, yet you chose disgrace. Explain yourself before my throne." The soldier stood tall, his voice firm, echoing across the chamber. "I chose with my heart, not with my eyes," he declared. The court erupted with outrage. Alien lords shouted that he had insulted their traditions. Some demanded the choice be undone. But the queen raised her hand and silence fell. Her gaze locked upon her daughter, the one they called the ugliest. The princess kept her eyes low, afraid to meet her mother's stare. Yet the soldier stepped closer, shielding her with his presence. "If she is a burden," he said, "then I will carry her. If she is unwanted, then I will want her. And if she is weak, then I will stand for her." His words left even the queen speechless. The princess lifted her head at last. Her eyes glistened as if a hidden flame had stirred inside her. For years she had been made small, crushed under scorn, buried under the weight of beauty she did not match. But now, standing beside a man who feared neither mockery nor crown, something inside her began to awaken. She straightened her shoulders, her crown catching the light. And for the first time, her voice carried strength as she spoke in the silence. "Then I will not be weak," she said. The court remained unsettled after the human soldier's bold declaration. Many nobles whispered that the queen should punish him for daring to defend what they considered a disgrace. Yet the queen only studied her daughter in silence. Something in her eyes betrayed unease, as though the soldier's words touched a truth she wished to bury. The princess stood at his side, her head high for the first time. Though fear lingered within her, his presence gave her strength to hold herself. Firm before the crowd, when they were dismissed, the soldier led her out of the hall without hesitation. His steps were steady, and his hand brushed against hers in quiet reassurance. She had never known such gentleness. Every gesture from others in her life had been sharp, mocking, or dismissive. But with him there was no cruelty, no hidden game. She felt a warmth that unsettled her heart and confused her mind. The halls no longer felt like a prison, for she was not walking alone anymore. They reached the garden, a vast place filled with strange glowing plants and crystal fountains. Here the air was fresher, the noise of the court far behind them. The soldier sat upon a stone bench and gestured for her to join him. She hesitated, unused to being invited rather than ordered. Slowly, she lowered herself beside him, her armor catching the light. For a long moment neither spoke, the silence filled only by the sound of flowing water and distant birds. Then at last she whispered, "Why did you choose me?" His answer was simple. "Because you were real," he said. She blinked at him, confusion in her eyes. He explained that her sisters shone like carved statues, perfect but cold. When he looked at her, he saw life, not image. He saw scars that spoke of survival, eyes that carried hidden storms, and a heart that had not broken even under years of scorn. "I chose you," he said, "because I saw more than beauty." His voice carried a weight that made her chest ache as though chains had been cut free. Tears burned her eyes, though she did not wish to show weakness. No one had ever spoken to her like this. Her whole life had been measured against her sisters, judged unworthy at every step. But this soldier from a world far away had seen something else within her. The dam inside her heart cracked, and a quiet sob escaped. She turned her face away ashamed, but his hand rested lightly on hers. "You do not need to hide from me," he said with calm strength. The days that followed were different from anything she had known. They walked together through training fields where human and alien soldiers drilled side by side. Whispers still followed them, mocking and sharp, but the soldier never wavered. His steady presence gave her courage to keep walking, even when eyes burned holes in her back. Slowly she began to meet their stares, not with fear, but with quiet defiance. Each day her voice grew steadier, her steps more certain, and her heart a little less heavy. One evening, while watching the sunset from the high walls, she told him of her life. She spoke of nights alone in chambers where laughter from her sisters echoed through the halls. She spoke of punishments given for mistakes she did not make, of expectations that crushed her, of a crown placed upon her head only to mock her. Her words spilled out like a storm long held back. The soldier listened without interruption, his eyes fixed on hers. When she finished, he said only one thing: "You endured, and that is strength." For the first time she smiled. It was not wide, not radiant like her sisters, but it was real. That smile carried more power than all their jewels and crowns. The soldier returned it with quiet pride. The garden lights flickered around them, casting silver glow across their faces. In that moment she felt something awaken deep inside her. It was not just hope, but something stronger, a force long buried beneath years of scorn. She realized she was no longer afraid of who she was. She realized she was ready to become more. The uneasy peace between humans and the alien court began to shake in the weeks that followed. While the queen accepted the soldier's choice outwardly, whispers of rebellion stirred among her council. Many nobles hated the idea of a human sharing their royal blood. Others despised that their least favored princess now stood beside him with her head held higher than ever before. The halls were filled with eyes that watched their every move, waiting for them to falter. The soldier continued to train with his men each morning. His discipline inspired not only his human comrades, but also some alien warriors who began to respect his strength. The princess often stood nearby, silent but watchful. At first her presence was mocked, yet slowly her quiet courage began to silence the cruelest voices. She was no longer the trembling shadow they had known. Her steps grew firm, and her voice no longer broke when she spoke. Every day she grew into something greater than they had ever imagined. One evening, while crossing the outer walls, they heard a sound that did not belong. The soldier froze, his instincts sharpened by years of battle. The princess felt it too. A vibration in the air, low and dangerous. Moments later, the alarm bells rang across the citadel. From the skies descended dark ships, their symbols unfamiliar even to the alien queen. A new enemy had arrived, drawn by the weakness of the empire and the fractured peace between species. The soldier barked orders with calm authority. Human squads formed lines, alien guards took position, and weapons were drawn. The princess stood by his side, fear flashing in her eyes but not overtaking her. The new invaders unleashed fire across the walls, shattering stone and throwing soldiers to the ground. Yet in the chaos, the human soldier never released her hand. "Stay with me," he commanded firmly. She nodded, her breath fast but her resolve steady. For the first time, she was not running from danger but facing it. As the battle raged, the enemy broke through the first gates. Soldiers screamed as beams of energy tore through armor and walls. The queen's forces faltered under the ferocity of the attack. But where others hesitated, the soldier charged forward with his unit. His courage sparked the humans to follow, and even alien guards found strength in his voice. The princess watched him fight, each strike of his blade filled with unyielding will. He stood as if unbreakable, and for the first time she felt proud that he had chosen her. Then something within her began to stir. As she reached to help a wounded guard, light flickered across her skin. It was faint at first, like the reflection of moonlight, but then it grew brighter. The soldiers around her gasped as the glow spread from her hands, sealing wounds and calming cries of pain. She stared at her own fingers in shock, trembling as the power flowed out of her. For years her family had called her flawed, unwanted, and weak, but now strength long hidden revealed itself in the fire of war. Word of her act spread quickly across the walls. Soldiers who once sneered now shouted her name in awe. The human soldier turned to her, his eyes wide, not with fear but with recognition. He had seen something within her before anyone else, and now the world saw it too. She met his gaze, her voice unsteady but strong. "I am not what they told me I was," she said. His answer came without hesitation. "I knew it from the moment." "I saw you," he replied with quiet certainty. The tide of battle began to shift. With her healing light and his unbreakable strength, soldiers rallied where they had nearly broken. Together they stood at the heart of the storm, not as a warrior and a burden, but as equals bound by fate. And as the invaders pressed harder against the walls, the hidden power of the princess continued to blaze brighter, marking the beginning of a truth none in the court had ever dared to imagine. The battle did not end quickly. The invaders pressed hard against the citadel walls, their weapons cutting through stone and metal. Yet the defenders held because two figures refused to bend. The human soldier fought with relentless strength, his blade flashing under the fire of enemy ships. At his side the princess stood, her hands glowing as she healed wounds and lifted the fallen back to their feet. Together they became the heart of the defense, and soldiers rallied wherever they appeared. The alien queen watched from her throne room with unease. Reports of her daughter's power reached her ears with every messenger. She had always believed that child to be her weakest. She had hidden her from ceremonies, mocked her scars, and pushed her into shadows. Now the same daughter shone brighter than all the others. The queen's heart tightened with fear, for she remembered the old prophecies that spoke of one who would rise from rejection to lead in fire and blood. The princess herself felt the weight of new eyes upon her. Soldiers she had known only as tormentors now looked at her with awe. Their voices cried her name as if she were a savior. It filled her with strength, but also with doubt. She turned to the human soldier in the middle of the chaos and whispered, "They look to me now, but I am not ready." His answer was simple, steady, and firm. "You are ready because you choose to be. Nothing more is needed." As the night deepened, the enemy pushed closer to the central gates. Explosions shook the citadel, and screams echoed through the corridors. The soldier led a counterattack with a small group, and the princess refused to stay behind. Her power flowed stronger than ever, her light blazing against the dark. Wherever she walked, despair turned to courage. She no longer bowed her head. She no longer hid her scars. She walked with her back straight, her crown shining as though it had been forged anew in the fire of battle. The queen's council grew restless. Some argued that the princess should be embraced as a symbol of hope. Others demanded she be restrained, fearing what her power might become. In the council chamber, voices clashed louder than the battle outside. Yet the queen remained silent, her mind trapped between pride and dread. She remembered her own hand pushing that child aside for years, and now she wondered if her cruelty had forged this strength or merely delayed it. In her silence, she feared the answer. Meanwhile, the soldier and the princess pushed through the smoke-filled streets where civilians cowered in fear. The invaders sought not only the throne but also the people themselves. They burned homes and shattered markets. But when the princess raised her hands, the light spread wide, shielding innocence from the falling fire. Mothers wept in gratitude. Children clung to her robes, and men who had once mocked her swore to fight by her side. She saw it with her own eyes, the truth she had long denied. She was no longer the hidden one. She was becoming a leader. The soldier never left her side. His sword cleared paths, his voice commanded order, and his strength made every stand possible. Yet he knew the greater strength belonged to her now. He did not resent it. Instead, he carried it with pride, knowing his choice had revealed what the world had tried to bury. "I chose you because you were real," he reminded her in a rare moment of quiet between clashes. She looked at him, her chest heavy with emotions she could not name, and for the first time she believed him. The dawn came with smoke hanging over the citadel. The enemy had been pushed back but not destroyed. The defenders stood bloodied yet alive, their faith tied to two figures who had fought as one. The human soldier and the princess stood at the highest wall, gazing over the broken fields. Behind them, whispers spread like wildfire, whispers of a soldier's loyalty and a princess's hidden power. And in that moment, the court and the people alike began to see that the ugliest princess was no longer in shadow but standing in light. The sun rose heavy with smoke, casting red light across the broken walls of the citadel. The battle from the night before had left scars everywhere. Burned towers stood like skeletons, and the fields outside were littered with shattered weapons. Yet within the city, the people carried new voices. They spoke of the human soldier who fought without fear. They spoke louder still of the princess who glowed with power, healing the broken and shielding the weak. Her name, once whispered with shame, now carried like fire through the streets. The queen stood on her balcony, listening to the sound of her people. Her heart twisted as she watched them cheer for the daughter she had cast aside. Her other daughters gathered around her, their jeweled armor shining as always. Their faces were masks of anger, filled with jealousy at the sudden rise of the one they had mocked all their lives. "Mother," one hissed, "she is dangerous. If you allow her to stand higher, she will take everything from us." The queen clenched her hands on the rail, torn between blood and throne. Inside the council hall, the arguments grew louder. Some nobles demanded the princess be declared heir, claiming her power was proof of destiny. Others shouted for her exile, fearing she would destroy the order of the empire. The human soldier sat in silence beside her, his expression steady. He spoke only when the noise became unbearable. "You waste time with fear," he said. "She has already proven herself on the battlefield. Judge her not by bloodlines, but by what she has done." His voice silenced the room more than any noble's threat could. The princess looked down at her own hands, the faint glow still lingering in her skin. She remembered the fear in the eyes of her sisters, the unease in her mother's gaze. All her life they had crushed her spirit, convinced her she was nothing. Now the same scars they had mocked were symbols of strength. She did not feel ready for crowns or thrones, but she no longer felt ashamed of who she was. She raised her chin and said softly, "I will not hide again." The enemy, however, was not finished. Scouts brought grim news of a larger fleet gathering beyond the horizon. The first attack had only been a test. The true strike was coming, and it would burn the empire to ash if not stopped. Panic spread among the nobles, and fear began to pull at the people's hearts once more. Yet when they looked to the soldier and the princess, they found calm. He stood like a wall of iron, and she shone like a light in the storm. Together they were becoming a force greater than crown or sword. That night, while the campfires burned, across the ruined courtyards, the soldier spoke quietly to her. "They will need you more than me soon," he said. She shook her head fiercely, unwilling to believe it, but he smiled faintly. "My strength is for battle. Yours is for hearts. You have something I will never carry. You give them hope." His words settled in her chest like a seed, and for the first time she began to wonder if she could lead not just with light, but with will. The queen could not sleep. She wandered her private chamber, staring at the carved faces of her ancestors. Every whisper from the council, every cheer from the streets, and every memory of her daughter weighed heavy on her shoulders. She had built her throne on control and fear, but now she saw her empire bend toward a strength she did not command. For the first time in many years she felt powerless, and in that weakness grew a quiet, bitter dread that the ugliest child she had despised might one day surpass her. When the horns of dawn sounded again, the city gathered at the gates. The fleet of the enemy had appeared, blotting out the sky with black wings of steel. The defenders shook with fear, yet when the princess walked to the wall beside the soldier, the crowd fell silent. Light rippled across her skin as though the sun itself had chosen her. The soldier raised his blade high, his voice ringing clear. "Stand with us," he called. And with those words the city, human and alien alike, roared as one against the storm. The sky darkened as the enemy fleet descended, covering the light of the twin suns. Ships shaped like black blades cut through the air, their engines screaming across the sky. The defenders of the citadel braced themselves, weapons ready, hearts racing. At the front wall stood the human soldier and the princess, side by side. His grip on his sword was firm, and her glow was already beginning to pulse with quiet strength. Around them soldiers whispered prayers, waiting for the storm to break. The first strike came like thunder. Energy beams rained down, shattering towers and tearing stone apart. The ground shook under the weight of fire, and screams filled the air. Yet the defenders did not scatter. The soldier raised his voice above the chaos, rallying the troops. His orders cut through fear like steel, and the lines held firm. Beside him the princess raised her hands, casting her light across the wounded. Bodies that moments before had been broken stirred again, and men rose to fight with renewed strength. Enemy pressed harder, swarming the walls with machines and warriors in black armor. The defenders were outnumbered, their lines stretched thin. Yet wherever the soldiers struck, the enemy fell. He moved with the precision of experience, every motion a blade of survival. The princess followed close, her light not only healing, but burning when turned upon their foes. Shock rippled through the battlefield as enemy soldiers recoiled under her glow, their dark armor cracking as though her very presence shattered it. The queen watched from her throne tower, her face pale. Every prophecy she had ignored now stood before her eyes. Her daughter, the one she had despised, was rising as a figure of power beyond crown or command. Her other daughters stood at her side, their eyes filled with rage and fear. "Mother," one pleaded, "stop her before it is too late." But the queen's hands trembled. She could not deny what she saw. The people no longer cheered for her throne. They cheered for the princess who had once been hidden in shame. The battlefield grew fierce as night bled into morning. The enemy's machines climbed the walls, tearing at stone with claws of iron. The soldier met them with fire, his blade cleaving through their limbs as sparks lit the sky. The princess's power grew brighter with every heartbeat, spreading wider across the walls. She no longer trembled when the wounded reached for her. She no longer hid when her light burned against the dark. She walked through the storm as if it were nothing, her scars shining like symbols of destiny. The enemy commander, a towering figure clad in black steel, landed upon the wall with a roar. His presence made even seasoned warriors falter. He swung, a blade taller than a man, scattering defenders with each strike. Yet the soldier stepped forward without hesitation, meeting the giant blow for blow. Sparks flew as steel clashed, the sound of war echoing across the citadel. The princess stood behind him, her light flaring, her voice steady as she called, "You will not take this city while we stand." Their fight became the center of the battle. Soldiers from both sides turned their eyes to the clash upon the wall. The human soldier bled from his arms, yet his stance did not break. The enemy commander pushed harder, his strength monstrous, but the soldier's will burned brighter. Then the princess stepped forward, her light surging until it engulfed the wall in brilliance. The enemy commander staggered, his armor cracking under her power. With a final strike from the soldier's blade, the giant fell, shattering the stone. Beneath him, a roar rose from the defenders as the enemy faltered. For the first time, hope outweighed fear. The princess stood tall, her glow bathing the citadel like dawn. Soldiers fell to their knees, not in fear, but in awe. The queen's heart froze as she realized what had begun. The child she had rejected now carried the spirit of her people. And standing beside her was the human who had chosen her when no one else would. Together they had become the symbol of resistance, and no crown could command them now. The fall of the enemy commander shook the battlefield. His armored body lay broken across the stones, and the dark soldiers hesitated for the first time. The defenders roared with renewed strength, surging forward to drive the invaders back. The human soldier stood breathing hard, his blade dripping with sparks of shattered steel. At his side the princess glowed brighter than ever, her light flowing like a river across the wounded. For a moment the war itself seemed to bow before them. The enemy fleet tried to regroup in the skies, but their fire was no longer enough to break the defenders. Every beam of destruction met a shield of light. Every machine that breached the walls fell to human steel. The princess no longer feared her power. She spread it wide, lifting men to their feet, turning despair into courage, and forcing the invaders to stagger under the weight of her brilliance. The soldier fought wherever her light led him, and together they became unstoppable. The queen stood frozen in her high chamber, watching as her city was saved by the daughter she had cast aside. Her jeweled hands trembled on the edge of her throne. Her other daughters stood in silence, their beauty dull compared to the glow of their sister. For the first time, they were the shadows, and the one they had mocked was the flame. The queen's pride battled with fear, yet even she could not deny what her people now shouted with one voice. They called the princess their savior. By dawn, the enemy was broken. Their ships retreated in flames, their warriors cut down or scattered into the fields. Smoke curled over the ruins, but the citadel still stood. The defenders lifted their weapons high in victory, their cheers echoing through the battered streets. At the heart of it all, the soldier and the princess stood together. Their hands joined, their bodies scarred but unbroken. Around them the people pressed close, bowing not to the queen but to the daughter who had risen from the ashes of rejection. The queen finally descended from her throne, her steps heavy as she approached the crowd. The soldiers and the citizens parted for her, but their eyes did not follow her as they once did. All gazes turned instead to the princess, who stood tall in her scars and her crown. The queen's voice faltered when she spoke. "You have done what even I could not," she admitted. Her words were bitter yet true. The throne was hers in name, but her people's hearts belonged to another. The princess did not bow. She looked at her mother with calm eyes, no anger in her voice, only resolve. "I do not seek to steal your throne," she said. "I seek only to protect those who cannot protect themselves. That is my duty, that is my choice." Her words silenced the crowd, for they were not filled with hunger for power but with truth. The queen lowered her head, and for the first time, the woman who had mocked her own child felt the weight of shame. The human soldier remained, quiet as the people lifted the princess upon their shoulders. He did not need to speak, for he had known this truth from the beginning. He had chosen her not because of beauty, not because of prophecy, but because he had seen the strength hidden inside her when no one else did. Now the world saw it too. The ugliest princess was no longer hidden. She was the light of her people, and no crown or jewel could compare to the fire she carried within. As the city rebuilt, the legend of the soldier and the princess spread across the stars. Tales of the battle reached worlds far beyond the empire. Stories of a human who chose differently and a princess who revealed her true self. Together they had changed the fate of a kingdom, not with polished beauty or empty pride, but with scars, courage, and truth. And so the story ended where it had begun, with a choice that defied mockery and revealed destiny, a choice that bound them forever as one.